tubing coming from the penis of Michael Jackson. What the medical experts will tell you is this is a device to collect urine when you're literally knocked unconscious for surgical procedures. This is what he sees on the body of Michael Jackson when he comes into the room and sees what he appears to be, to him, a dead Michael Jackson. Conrad Murray begins instructing Alberto Alvarez immediately upon his entry into the room and tells him, grab a bag. And Conrad Murray grabs a handful of vials from the nightstand and drops them in the bag. He also tells Alberto Alvarez to grab the saline bag, or the bag hanging from the IV stand in the room. Alberto Alvarez does so. And Alberto Alvarez notes that it was actually a bag that appeared to be clear in nature, and it had a bottle inside of it. A bottle that we later learned to be a propofol bottle. Alvarez complies with the requests of Dr. Murray, and what we know is subsequently this is corroborated by law enforcement, because when they go back to search the house on June 29th, they find a bag, and inside that bag is an empty saline bag, which you'll see in court, but it's slit open from top to bottom. And inside that bag, you'll hear from the coroner investigator, they found this 100 milliliter bottle of propofol inside the bag. And you will hear testimony about the significance of that when the medical experts come in and explain it to you. Following the commands of Conrad Murray, Alvarez is then told to call 911, and he immediately does so. And what you'll learn is that 911 call was made at 12:20 p.m. What you'll also learn from the evidence is that phone call was not made at 11:56 or thereabouts, when Sade Anding had heard the phone go dead and heard commotion in the background. That 911 call was not made at 12:12 p.m. when the defendant called Michael Amir Williams to say there had been a problem. That 911 call was not made at 12:15 when Michael Amir Williams returned the call and spoke to Conrad Murray, who only relayed to him that he needed to get there right away. The 911 call was instructed to be made by Conrad Murray at 12:20 p.m. Now, emergency response was on the scene immediately. However, it was altogether too late because Michael was already dead. But the paramedics did respond to the scene, and they took every effort they could to revive Mr. Jackson. You'll learn that they got on scene on top of the patient at 12:26 p.m. His pupils, Mr. Jackson's pupils, were fixed and dilated. There was no pulse noted by any of the paramedics on scene. Murray had indicated he felt that Jackson had been down only a minute. I was just talking to him. Although no one felt a pulse, Murray claimed he did. This was not felt by any of the emergency medical personnel on scene. And when specifically asked, what have you been giving him? What has he taken? The paramedics were told lorazepam. Specifically asked what had been administered. They were told lorazepam, and Conrad Murray never once mentioned the administration of propofol during his entire dealings with these emergency medical personnel. UCLA was on the phone with the paramedics, and they pronounced Michael dead. Conrad Murray indicated he wanted to take over responsibility and that he would accompany Mr. Jackson in the paramedics' rig, and that was agreed upon. So they transported Michael Jackson to UCLA. In this photo here is the paramedics' arrival to UCLA. This is actually Conrad Murray here in these loose pants and a white T-shirt. Nearby, I believe, is some of the security, Fahim Muhammad, Alberto Alvarez, Michael Amir Williams. And this is them entering UCLA, the emergency room area. When they enter into the emergency room area, obviously the emergency room doctors now want to know what transpired. So they inquire. Both Dr. Cooper and Dr. Wynn specifically asked Conrad Murray, what has he been taking? What have you given him? He indicates he had been taking Flomax, and he'd had some Valium. The only agent he gave him was lorazepam. and never once mentions to these medical emergency room doctors that are trying valiantly to save Michael Jackson's life, never once mentions that he had administered any propofol whatsoever. Michael is eventually pronounced dead at 2:26 p.m. on June 25, 2009. Following this, there's a search at the house at 100 North Carrollwood. Propofol bottle is found lying on the floor. Various prescription medicines are found on the nightstand, the majority of which are prescribed by Conrad Murray, although some are prescribed by other doctors. An ambu bag is found on the floor, which I'll talk about briefly in a moment. This syringe is found on the nightstand, and this syringe tests positive for both propofol and lidocaine. Also, this IV stand with a saline bag and a detached IV tubing and syringe was observed and collected on a subsequent day, but that syringe tested positive for propofol, lidocaine, and flumazenil. They observed on this table nearby where Conrad Murray would